Thanks for tuning in to the Art of ADHD. I'm your host, Liam Park, and on today's episode, we're meeting with inventor, entrepreneur, biohacker, and creative Damjan Madjar. Damjan has done a lot of incredible things, and most recently, he operates a business called Bioshack, where he helps people tune their physiology to tune their mind. In this conversation, we discuss how mindset, physiology, and life experiences impact our mind, and again, how we can thrive with ADHD. I hope you enjoy the show. Well, thanks for coming out today, Damjan. I'm so excited to chat.
Likewise, I'm honored that you brought me on.
Yeah, so last night we were on the phone, and I had just finished another conversation with another guy, an educator. We had been going on to explore like what ADHD means, because there's sort of some like baggage on the label. And you said you had some thoughts about that. So what do you think? What is ADHD, or what does it mean to you?
I guess more so like kind of like where it stems from, because there's so much information out there as to, is it our short attention span over the last few years where we're just inundated with dopamine hits, where I definitely feel like that's a contributing factor, because I see it in children that my friends have, where their screen time's a lot more. Look at when we grew up. I don't feel like we're that old per se, but what was our screen time like? We started with like Nintendo, right? Yeah. And even there's some data out there right now that shows there's certain TV shows with the frame rate when the scene changes. So it allows us to not have so much, how could you say that, like patience, I guess, yeah. Right, with taking in the information. But kind of backtracking to is what else is like a contributing factor to ADHD, and I sometimes base it off of kind of like what my personal experience is as well, and it is trauma based, a lot of it. Somebody who really dives deep into this, of course, Gabor Mate's work, right? Yeah, he talks about how ADHD is passed down, and it's a trauma that's passed down, and so then the results are these ADHD, what would you call them, like tendencies, yeah. And it's through my personal development work over the course of the last like heavily 5-6 years, I've noticed actually that my ADHD tendencies have decreased. Yeah. It's, working through the inner child, connecting with your inner child, and knowing now as an adult that perhaps how my parents, which they did an amazing job, and they knew only what they knew, but there's certain things, as you find out with reading podcasts, audiobooks, and with all the literature and studies that have been done up until now, and if that's something that, you or I, or specifically myself, I'm curious about learning, you see that the way that your child reacted or acted or was presented in a situation when they were little, and they felt a certain way. So we aren't really able to control our emotions when we're younger. Yeah. And that in result to this whole roundabout way would lead us to retaining those lack of emotions or big emotions into adulthood. Yeah. And so we distract ourselves. That's like one of the things, right? When, say, we're a little kid and mommy and daddy aren't paying attention to us. I'm not saying that this happened to me, but this is an example. They don't pay attention to us, so then we distract ourselves. And so we are always looking for things to do. And that then in our upbringing, it shows throughout school. I was called a social butterfly in like grade 2. I didn't even know what the heck that was. Yeah. And now knowing what that would mean was like, yeah, I had some ADHD tendencies in school. I wouldn't say act out in a way where I was trying to hurt myself or somebody else, but more so garner attention. Yeah. And that was perhaps maybe because my parents were working. We were an immigrant family coming to Canada when I was like 1 from Slovenia, and they just had to do what they had to do. Yeah. And I also did have a sister, but we went to our parents' friend's place, and say there were no children to play with, right? So
Yeah.
they didn't have toys, so we just have to figure it out. It's
Yeah.
boredom.
Yeah.
So it's weird, because then kind of going back to the beginning of what I was saying is like the instant dopamine hits, or the excessive dopamine hits that children now face as well. There's just got to be, it comes back down to balance.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there. I think one of the things I want to tease apart for listeners is the trauma piece, because a lot of people hear this, maybe they listen to the last podcast. I was also talking about Gabor Mate, and when I first heard it, it's like, oh, I'm not traumatized. Like, my parents didn't beat me. But in some of his books, he sort of distinguishes, like, there's capital T trauma, which is like that hard trauma, like you can imagine what it
Passes
is.
away.
And then there's these subtle traumas that you don't even realize are that big a deal, where like maybe, yeah, you're a little tiny emotional child. You don't know how to process things. You're crying over something silly and trivial, and you're just told, don't cry. And your little brain can't comprehend it, and it sort of thinks, my emotions are inappropriate. My emotions are not welcome. And so, yeah, you start to suppress your emotions and be afraid of your emotions, perhaps not able and willing to face them. That, yeah, escalates into all these other issues. And that's sort of like a lower T trauma. Like, yeah, it's not a huge deal to be told, like, shut up and don't cry. But that can have a lasting impact on your own ability to regulate our emotions or recognize them. And if they're not engaged right, then how do you cope as an adult?
That's exactly what I mean by that. Yeah, and the thing is, when you're a parent, a lot of times you don't even realize that that's happening with the way that you are or are not acting with your child. I'm blessed to have a little beautiful girl right now that's almost 18 months old.
Yeah.
And even at that age right now, I'm seeing that she'll cry out, she'll desire something. I mean, she can't really use all her words quite yet, but it's being in a calm, natural state and just allowing her to be.
Yeah.
Having her feel even heard or seen.
Yeah.
And that in itself will help build that resilience, or more so the security within herself. It's like, hey, like, I'm allowed to just feel.
Yeah. Which is sort of, I think, interesting too, because there's like trends in parenting, and, studies develop over the years or cultures change. And so, like, when I was growing up, when I was a small child, I even remember my mom sort of bragging about this, and, I don't blame anyone. So, but when I was having a tantrum or something, a lot of people in our generation were having tantrums. What was the common, like, knowledge, common accepted practice was, oh, go to your room.
Go to your room.
Go to your room. Go be alone until you're ready to join us. Mm-hmm. Which, again, is sort of signaling your emotions are inappropriate. Mom and dad don't want any part of them. Mom and dad are not going to support you through that. You should hide your emotions. You
Definitely.
should isolate when you're feeling emotional.
Yeah.
And so when people are like, yeah, why is there so much ADHD now? Some of it, yeah, it could be this like infinite barrage of distractions. That's very likely a factor. But even just that was like a normal parenting strategy that was like well publicized. Everyone thought that's how you develop mature kids.
Yeah.
Is you tell them, go be alone until you can manage your emotions by yourself.
It's bizarre.
Yeah.
It really is bizarre. And again, it's because that's probably what their parents did. And that's probably like what the parent generation before did. So all these things just get passed down. Yeah. So that's why, like, we have the opportunity when you become a parent to become a cycle breaker.
Yeah.
With awareness, with conversations like this, with books and reading and listening to more podcasts and so on.
Yeah.
And I think that in a day and age where technology exists so involved with our world and everything is so accessible,
yeah,
I don't think there's an excuse anymore to parent like what you just said.
Yeah.
I don't think that it is fair to say that I'm just doing what my parents taught me.
Yeah.
An open mind, like
Yeah.
that is the key to life, and just you don't have to have the thirst of knowledge.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not that, but just like take a look at yourself
Yeah.
at times. And it's like where, like, and be real with yourself and say, hey, like the way that I'm acting, and I'm specifically talking about maybe per se being a parent, right?
Yeah.
The way that I'm acting with my parent, is that just something that I learned from my parents? Like, is that the right thing?
Yeah.
Or is that just what they learned? So then they taught it to me. And it's like, you have the opportunity now to completely revisit and redo that thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's one of like the really bright sides of technology. We started with sort of the darkness of technology, but here's a cool thing about technology is you sort of can decentralize who your parent figures are or your mentors, because like, yeah, like in the Bible, they say you will know them by their fruits. And so if you have a parent who's chronically stressed or miserable, yeah, maybe you don't want to do things the way they did things. Maybe you can like look into the ether, look into the online world and see like, how are people who are like calm, well-adjusted, happy, full of love and trust, how are they doing it? And they're out there sharing it on social media. And like some of social media is fake, so you need to be discerning. But you can find people who are not, like I love my dad, and he's been a great role model in so many ways, like teaching me about mindset and how the brain works. His physical health isn't that great. So as far as being a role model for physical health, no, I'm going to pick Joe Rogan or some other guy who like really obviously is working on their physical health to be my role model instead of living the way my dad did in terms of health and fitness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's to the point of like as well technology. It's like, what does the future hold for all this as well? With AI coming in, it's like I've never actually asked myself this question, and I think it's a really interesting one to explore. Is like, what are the implications of AI on ADHD?
Yeah.
Is it going to, if a contributing factor is, say, the content that's put out or the dopamine hits, how is AI going to shift our brains, our brain states? Is it going to force us to go inwards more into ourselves?
Yeah.
Or is it going to be forcing us to just like live with AI as like, I don't like to say this, but like not overlord. Like I'm not in that fear mindset where AI is going to take over or anything like that. I think there's going to be a time of like beautiful, harmonious times.
Yeah.
But there's this weirdness about it where it's like, what will happen?
Yeah, I think sort of like any disruptive technology, it's going to just like amplify things. And so for some people, it's going to amplify them negatively and some people's positively. Like one of my buddies, he was telling me about this app he showed me. It's an AI app called Goblin Tools, which is one of the best ADHD apps available. Because like I'm working with ADHD people, and in my own life, you get something on a list sometimes. You're like, clean the kitchen, Monday, clean the kitchen, Tuesday, clean the kitchen. You're not cleaning the kitchen. It's because it's like 20 tasks disguised as one. Goblin Tools, you put your task in and you click a button and it breaks it down into steps. It's a very simple tool. You could use ChatGPT or anything else like that for it. But
streamlined.
That's one of the cool things. Like that's how I like to use AI, is it's a collaborator. Like usually if I get it to write something, I don't quite like its results, but it can help get the ball rolling if you get to like that friction sticking point, that overwhelm of like, there's too much to do.
There's the other side of it too, though, that's like advertising. So now if one of the reasons why there's that short attention span, because we get inundated with advertisements that are, if you notice, or next time you get hit with some advertisements, notice the way that they've filmed or edited it. Fast screen rates, rapid information. Yeah. And it's because we need to take it in that way. There's this like alternative, like long form content or just like a slower like storyline. Anything that's over like 15 seconds, it's you just, as an ad, You got to capture that person in the first like literally 2 to 3 seconds.
Yeah.
So with AI, if we now if it knows that,
Yeah.
and the future of advertising is going to be AI, now as the consumer, that's all we're going to be hit with.
Yeah.
So that'll perpetuate into from like childhood, because the psychology around advertising in for children is going to be different for a young adult and an adult and a baby boomer, who whatever.
Yeah.
So AI will just be able to structure that and they'll hit that demographic.
Yeah.
So it's essentially perpetuating the dopamine epidemic that we're actually facing right now. Because I mean, going back to just simplified, what is ADHD? And I'm not sure if you've covered this in a previous podcast, but you know, it's a lack of dopamine. Your brain isn't producing enough. We need more dopamine hits.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think I've got great faith in humanity, and obviously the technology is changing rapidly, so things could be different, but I think a lot of people with ADHD especially have this sort of authenticity magnetism almost. Like I think a lot of people, ADHD or autism, if it feels like something is disingenuous or, you know, sort of phony, there's a disgust that emerges, or a repulsion. And so like sometimes when I see AI content, that comes very quickly for me. That first 2 to 3 seconds of the ad, if I hear that AI voice, I'm out. Like, I'm not interested. And maybe that's just me. Like, I am sort of a bit of a naturalist in other ways too, like diet and whatever. But yeah, like I think humanity stands a chance, but we kind of do need to collaborate with these technologies.
Yeah.
We can't go all in or do away with them.
Yeah. I mean, again, it comes back to the dopamine problem.
Yeah.
So I guess this ventures into like, I'm curious, like what you do to say promote dopamine in a way where you don't have to take medication, because that's essentially what ADHD medication is doing, is it's balancing the neurochemicals in your brain.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've tried a variety of things, and I think one of the most effective things is actually related to your business. So like, I'll flip it back on you, because there's a lot of good research about cold dipping, like, and what that does to your brain chemistry. Now you are currently running Bioshack. It's like, I don't know how long you've had it open now, a couple of years or year?
Since January.
Since January,
Yeah.
a year. So you got cold plunges, saunas. Tell me about how you hack your brain chemistry.
Yeah, so there's a couple modalities that don't involve any medication, don't involve any supplements, and they just use what can be available to you if you live near a body of water in the northern hemisphere, or I guess north of the 49th, where just a body of cold water, essentially. Yeah. And yeah, it's cold plunging. So cold plunging, they've done some studies, quite a few studies out there, and they've identified that it 2.5x is your dopamine. Yeah. It lasts for 6 to 8 hours. I don't know if you've ever done some cold plunging before, but and to our listeners and viewers, I challenge you to even just jump in, jump out. That's all. That rush that you feel, those are endorphins. Yeah. And there's obviously sweet spots, if there's a level of like stepping out of your comfort zone and embracing the cold and staying in there for a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever you're comfortable with. But there's like this sweet spot of like maximizing the endorphin rush. Yeah. And after that, yeah, you're shivering, you're cold, but there's like you're excited. There's obviously like a little bit of adrenaline there for sure too. Yeah. But man, like the energy you get from that is fascinating. Yeah. So that's one thing. And then another thing is breath work, which is kind of this word that is getting thrown out more often in the last couple of years. And it's a breathing technique. I would literally probably have to say like probably 100 different types of breathing techniques, box breathing, which doctors in the family office will actually be like, oh, if you want to de-stress, do some box breathing, 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out. Yeah. But there's other ones where you breathe a lot heavier, like Wim Hof teaches some, right? And you can find it on YouTube. He has an app now too, guided. And so this also releases dopamine, endorphins, etc. it provides you with like energy.
Yeah.
And what are these endorphins? They are a form of energy as well.
Yeah.
ADHD, you get scattered, you don't have enough dopamine. So that's why we're looking for dopamine hits, but those are fake. They're like little trickles, right, from social media and whatnot.
Yeah.
This is something that not just is so powerful for your mind, strengthening the mind, but also good for your body.
Yeah. Yeah, and the chemistry is really fascinating, and there's some great research on it. But with the cold dipping, I find one of the things, like, it might be related to the chemistry, but even if it's not, like, one of the crazy benefits is just getting yourself into a headspace where you're like willing to do something that you don't want to do and be okay with it. Because like there's so many people in the ADHD space. I've been that person where it's like, I don't want to do the laundry. Or I don't want to do the dishes, so I can't. And through practicing putting yourself in a situation where like, you know what? I don't want to get in the cold water. I don't. It's cold. It feels bad, kind of. Because after it feels really good. But like he's right, the endorphins are there. But that first step is hard almost every time. It's not It doesn't really get super easy to jump into cold water.
No.
But you train yourself to be okay with doing something that's not easy. And that's sort of what being an adult is all about.
For sure.
With or without ADHD.
For sure. I mean, there's ways to go about doing it. I mean, depending on how deep you want to get into that world of the cold plunging. But I mean, we have these cold plunges where, it comes with a chiller, which you can buy online through Bioshack, and it's temperature controlled. So, okay, like say you're very new and you just want like 16 degrees.
Yeah.
That'll still feel like cold to the person that's never really dived into any type of cold water. Do that for a couple days.
Yeah.
Turn it down. Keep turning it down. Turn it down to, by the time, I kid you not, if you do that every day for like 30 days, you're going to be down to like 4 to 6 degrees.
Yeah.
And you're going to be up to 2 minutes, 3 minutes, no problem.
Yeah.
And you do that for 30 days.
Yeah. And that's a good strategy, like ease into it. I think anything that can systematize it and turn your brain off too, because that's another piece of it. It's like so many of our challenges in our day-to-day life are more related to the chatter in our minds. Like these little voices that say, that's too hard, you can't do it, blah, blah, blah. And those voices are there when I want to do a cold plunge. One of the tools I found best is like my little stopwatch. It's got a countdown timer. And so like if I'm in my shower, I just have a routine. It's just a mechanical series of motions my body has to go through. So I don't need to use my mind. I don't need to use my brain. I just turn the hot water all the way off, click the countdown timer for a 1 minute timer. That's usually enough. And then I just rotate myself like a rotisserie chicken and try not to think. Like the words, don't worry about words. They're like
Sing a song,
Yeah.
do whatever.
Yeah, until when that watch beeps, I'm good. Turn the cold water off and we're done. And yeah, the energy you feel, the clarity, it can last all day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great way to start your day for sure. I mean, there's a lot of hype around it, but the Nordics have been doing this for decades and decades, right? It's embraced into their culture now.
And they've invented IKEA and 3M.
They've done a lot. They've done a lot for the world, definitely. Yeah. And from the cold plunging, you're setting yourself up, or cold exposure, you're setting yourself up for that day, right?
Yeah.
Now you have that extra energy, that dopamine per se, and the mental toughness. That you're jumping into your day like completely different than if you weren't doing that.
Yeah. So what about breath work? Like I've got a few practices I like that I find are helpful. You said there's hundreds. Are there certain ones that you find yourself going to?
To be honest, I love the Wim Hof app. It's free to download. You get 5 sessions for free. It's completely guided. You can input how many breaths you want to take, if you want background music, if you want him to guide you, all these things. And there's breath holds. Yeah. So he tells you when to hold your breath, and then the countdown timer starts, right? And just have it kind of beside you. You're like your hand right beside the phone, because when you finally inhale on that breath, you just double click it and then it'll start it again.
Yeah.
So really neat because it actually saves your breath holds.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, it was like 90 seconds. I remember my longest one was like 4 minutes and 20 seconds approximately, something like that.
Yeah.
And that was after like doing it for 2 months.
Yeah.
Again, the amazing endorphin rush. It's funny because these two things, actually, breath work and cold exposure, they become very addicting.
Yeah.
People actually get addicted to it, and they get addicted to it because of the dopamine.
Yeah.
But what a healthy thing to become addicted to.
Yeah.
You go ahead, do breath work for an hour. What's going to happen? Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? Nothing. It's great, good if you find the time to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously with cold exposure, you don't want to be in freezing cold water for 20, 30, 40 minutes unless you're literally an expert.
Yeah.
But you want to do it every day? You want to do it a couple times a day? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Like, these are great things, and they will help you to steer away from other cruxes you may have.
Yeah.
That you turn to that maybe aren't so healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I've done the Wim Hof a lot, and I find it, there's also like this calm that you don't realize you can sort of intentionally dial into when you're not breathing, right? Like, you don't think breathing takes much brain space, and maybe it doesn't, but like when you are intentionally not breathing, well, like, you sort of try to relax your whole body because every movement uses a little bit of oxygen, so you try to be as still as possible, and you find, like, I find, for me anyways, that leads to a stilling of the mind, like stilling the body and stilling the mind, and like just being more cognizant, more mindful of what kinds of chatter is emerging, because there's not all the distractions of, oh, my hands are moving right now, oh, my lungs are working right now. It's a deep calm.
Still, and this is the thing about ADHD, which it's one thing when you read something, you learn about it, great, it's there. So you learn something, and then there's a knowing. So when you transcend that learned thing into a knowing that's like embodied into you, and that actually happened a few weeks ago when I was in the forest and had an experience, and where it was as simple as, like, right now, what has been very common for young male adults mostly is there's these nicotine pouches.
Yeah.
Now, I don't smoke, I don't vape, I don't do any of that. But I got onto these because there was like 6 milligrams of nicotine. There's a bunch of research out there that it's considered a nootropic. A nootropic is something that stimulates the brain, again, produces little bits of dopamine, and helps with concentration. So I'm like, okay, sweet. Popped one of these in, did a bunch of my laptop work. I'm like, whoa, there's a little boost of energy. It's kind of like a coffee, right? I mean, technically, caffeine, not even technically, caffeine is considered a drug.
Yeah.
Just widely accepted.
Yeah.
I feel like this is also kind of in that category. Great. I'd take like another one in the afternoon or something. And a few months in, I was noticing, like, whoa, like I'm always throwing these in, right?
Yeah.
So again, a few weeks ago, I asked myself, I'm like, why? Like, why? I was just going through a bunch of the kind of organizing things in my life and prioritizing, like, what's good for me, what's not. It's like, why? Like, I'm addicted to these. I feel like, why? Why do I need these? And it's because I wanted the dopamine hit.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, hold on. What I actually need in those moments is to slow down.
Yeah.
So essentially, I replaced it with just I completely that day. I'm like, I'm done with these. I haven't touched one since.
Yeah.
But what I replaced it with was like moments of stillness, and that can literally be 5 minutes of just like doing nothing, meditating. Right?
Yeah.
People, they get turned off by the word meditating a lot because they feel it has to be a certain way.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. It's just like, take a moment of stillness.
Yeah.
When you jump in a car, just take 5 breaths, take 3 breaths.
Yeah.
Just take that moment of stillness, because you will actually find your body, your nervous system settling down. And I guess this is where caffeine as well. I drink decaffeinated coffee, right? I drink more teas. I feel like when I drink coffee, it gives me a crash, and that there's science behind that as well. My adrenals with ADHD, they were running so high that my cup was full. So when you pour, what is coffee? It's a stimulant. You'd pour that on top.
Yeah.
Your coffee, now your cup is overflowing. I'm tired.
Yeah.
I'm tired after a big cup of coffee.
Yeah.
It's because my adrenals are running high. Well, so what do I need? What does my body actually need? You would think it needs more stimulation.
Yeah.
But it actually needs the opposite.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes me think of like the breath work that I find most common in my life. Like, and this one I think is great because a lot of people, yeah, it's hard to take up a new habit. Like even, 5 minutes. A lot of people feel so busy, finding 5 minutes is sometimes hard. It's hard to remember to do it. It's hard to do it, especially if you're running late for everything. But there's a type of breathing called coherent breathing or resonant breathing. That's like 5.5 seconds in, 5.5 seconds out, or 6 or 5, like depending on how comfortable you are. But typically it's seen as like 5.5 seconds in, 5.5 seconds out. And you just do that. And the cool thing about that is you can do it when you're having a conversation with someone. You can do it when you're driving your car. You can do it anytime. It's not going to make you pass out. It's slower than most people breathe. It's, works out to like 5 full breaths per minute. But that slow rate, it changes your heart rate. It changes your blood chemistry. It does help, regulate your nervous system. And I find I drop into that multiple times a day. Like I don't have a habit of it. It's just not like, I do this first thing in the morning. If I notice my heart rate goes up, I do it. If I notice I feel anxious or stressed, I do it. I do it anytime because it doesn't take time.
I think there's an app. Of course, there's an app, and they have a Apple Watch app as well. Maybe a Android one.
Yeah.
I think it's called Breath Tonics.
Okay.
And I remember I used to have an Apple Watch, and I just had it set for multiple times a day.
Yeah.
It would literally take a minute.
Yeah.
It would notify me it's time to breathe.
Yeah.
And it would vibrate with the breath. So
Yeah.
I would just stop what I'm kind of doing if I was able to.
Yeah.
And I would just go follow it. Like it would vibrate higher, like faster, and then slower, just for a minute. Man, that made the world of a difference.
Yeah.
It was so cool. So again, a minute.
Yeah.
You can find a minute.
Yeah, I think it's so cool to, people put a lot of faith in pharmaceuticals. I'm not here to denigrate them, but we are made of chemicals, and everything we eat, the way we breathe, everything about how we live our life can modulate those chemical systems. Mm-hmm. And there's so many simple and natural things we can do, like adjusting our breathing, exposing ourselves to cold stimulus, or, that can actually, make a difference in how you're feeling.
There's the last thing that I'll say about breathing techniques or whatever. A friend of mine, he just recently went to Hawaii on this retreat, and he came back with this beautiful little exercise. I'm in a men's group, and whenever we're, everyone's talking and we need to be like focused, he says this one word, and I believe it has some translation in Hawaiian, and it's hanu. And so if somebody in the group says hanu, everyone has to essentially stop what they're doing, take a deep breath, and then they say puka. To be honest, I don't even know if there is actually meaning behind it, but try it even right now, like our listeners. So it's like hanu, puka, and for some reason, puka. Those 3 words, the sounds on that exhale, just regulate your nervous system. Like it feels good.
It's like a 3-part sigh.
Yes, like a sigh. Sighing is beautiful.
Yeah.
So it's neat because I'm actually going to teach this to my daughter.
Yeah.
And if it's like, she needs a moment, especially because of her inability to regulate her emotions, I'm going to teach her like, hey, when daddy and mommy say hanu, we stop what we're doing, take a deep breath, and just that comes out.
I think that's like interesting to point out that too, like, because sighing sort of like, I think there's probably a lot of people with ADHD who may have been automatically and intuitively self-regulating with sighs and gotten in trouble with teachers and parents.
Yeah.
Like sighing is good. It's healthy. Obviously, there's a time when someone might be troubled by it. But if you can learn the science, then like your mom or teacher can like, you can explain it to them, and then they can not worry when you're sighing.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. Actually, the last thing that I'll my tidbit of what I do to counteract my ADHD tendencies is exercise.
Yeah.
So growing up, I would play a lot of sports. I mean, I was playing sports like 5 days a week, essentially, at one point. Of course, the big COVID happened and sports kind of declined. I'm like, what am I going to do? And also injuries, you get a little older. It's like, I love hiking and I would play soccer and get injured and be out for like 2 months. So it just wasn't worth it anymore.
Yeah.
Not trying to be like a big soccer star. And I wasn't really a gym goer either. So I'll share what worked with me was like group fitness. There's a bunch of chains out there. There's local ones that you can experience as well. I mean, there's those Orange Theory Fitness, F45. And it's so structured that you go in, you do your work, you're told what to do. An amazing workout. There's people of all ages, males, females. And after, like, if I don't go one morning, I actually feel it. I feel it in my brain fog.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's so much research about that too. I think there's a study on kids with ADHD that showed like even 5 minutes of exercise, like heavy duty cardio, like you work hard for 5 minutes, that's almost as effective as some meds. And that's pretty cool. And so if you're not finding time for physical health, your mental health is going to be impacted.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean they're all in one. Yeah, that's so true.
So how do you think, like, you've done quite a few random entrepreneurial projects. You're like an inventor, you're running the Bioshack. Like what's been your progression with ADHD over the years, and like how's that informed your businesses? Like, has it always been good? You've been made the most of it? Have you had certain challenges?
I think identifying where I'm lacking. So there's obviously certain strengths that I have. What are my weaknesses? And I mean, on the largest scale, it's kind of like an Elon Musk style. I'm not saying I'm not like Elon Musk, but I take his how he creates and does business, where he essentially formulates like a team, and pull those people in. They may not have to directly be involved with your business, but ask for help. Seek expertise from somebody that you don't really know anything about that sector. Like my weakness is numbers per se, right? Obviously you can get an accountant, bookkeeper, but even some of your friends, like, just have the open conversation about what they do with their business finances, of how do they raise money, what worked for them, can they share a spreadsheet, and focus on your strengths. And then when you get to that point, actually, like, you can hire out. Make sure you always hire out those parts in your business where you're weak in. That'll create more of a successful business. Where my strengths are is the abundance of creativity. And I feel like a lot of people with ADHD have an abundance of creativity. It's like what we lack is focus. Now there's a point where we will fight it. We'll fight, and then you go into the like, I can't do this. And then you get stuck in this cycle of like, you have all these ideas and you're never executing anything. Discuss it with people. If something hits, just take like that one step forward, and then take the next step forward. And you'd be surprised at how far you get. And people are actually going to see like, oh wow, like that person's actually, this idea, they're working on it, they're working towards it. Oh, they did it. You become more credible. People are going to start listening, and then and be vulnerable, be honest. You don't have to be like, I have ADHD, I can't do that. Just be like, hey, you know what? My strength is having a vision and being able to execute it to this point. When I get to this point, I need some help.
I think that's like one of my greatest gifts and curses related to the ADHD is I'm quite good at learning new things. And a lot of the time I try to take on too much. Like, I don't recognize my weakness. Instead, I'm like, I could learn that. And then I'm suddenly doing like 18 different things, and whoops. So how do you be humble and clear enough to recognize where your strengths end?
I think it's, I mean, you're writing it down, of course. I mean, I've also been a social butterfly since grade 2, so kind of identifying who in my life that's also business oriented, that I enjoy having a relationship, friendship with, that potentially we could just work on a project together. And again, it depends on what your intention is. Like, I have a mantra that created maybe 15 years ago, and it's do and create things that better the lives of individuals. So whenever I'm doing something in that realm, in that mantra, I'm at service. I'm doing something positive to the world, for the world.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, I'm fortunate that I kind of found that as like that's what drives my purpose, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's not doesn't have to be just one thing. It's like, if I'm positively contributing, great. Does it have to look a certain way? Because we get attached. Sometimes reading all these business and books on success and whatnot, we're like, how are we gonna ever do that? It's like, oh, I don't think I can do that like that way.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to look a certain way. Not always, right?
Yeah.
And so I've detached myself from certain expectations of how it's supposed to look. Because entrepreneurship, people are like, this is how you build it, this is what you do, etc. That definitely works for a lot of people, but it doesn't have to be the only way.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen the little meme or little design that was popular online, where it showed success, and it's like what people think it is, and it's like a growth like this, right?
Yeah.
And it's like what it really is, and it goes up, and then it's a lot of squiggles, up and down and up and down, and then it goes up.
Yeah.
And those squiggles, I mean, we all experience it, ADHD or not. It's just that with ADHD, we give up.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like a sensitivity. I think what your mantra like points to another important piece of this too, is that somehow or other, a lot of us like can, like, we if you don't have good self-esteem, then you kind of don't care if you do something for you. Self-care is hard if you have low self-esteem, because it's like, well, why does it even matter? But yeah, if you're doing and creating things that are for the betterment of other people, like most of us are willing to be of service. We'll hold the door for someone else. We'll help them pack some boxes or demolish their house or whatever, right? If we're asked, or even if we see an opportunity, see an old person with a whole bunch of bags crossing the street, maybe help them with their bags, and it naturally feels good to help. Whereas like, a lot of helping yourself doesn't feel good, but if you can see that the ways you help yourself are in service to other people, like the way you grow your business isn't for you, it's not to boost your status or boost your bank account, it's for others. I think for a lot of people that's a more sustainable motivation.
Yeah, I mean, we're meant to be in community. We're not meant to just do things completely for ourselves. I mean, it's quite a boring life.
Yeah.
Always just thinking about yourself, how you mentioned like holding the door open for somebody. Next time you do that, take notice of like how you feel after that. I mean, it's just something so simple.
Yeah.
So simple. And you did it for that other person without even thinking.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of these, right, that we can do. And I feel like even that will like slowly over time as a collective, it like heals us, and it heals the ADHD. It's like like a purpose. It's all these little nuances that add up.
Yeah. Yeah. And that purpose speaks to like Viktor Frankl. You ever read Man's Search for Meaning? Anyone who hasn't, this is a book was written by a psychologist who was in a concentration camp. Like he was in Auschwitz. I think he went to a different one. I don't know. He was a few concentration camps during like the Holocaust and was lucky enough to survive. And he wrote about how like he who has a why can endure anyhow, or something. Like if you have a sense of purpose, you can make it through just the most incredible situations. Not every time, but like spiritually, psychically, like that purpose makes a difference. So, okay, maybe it's harder for you to organize the papers on your desk because you got ADHD. Maybe it's harder for you to make appointments on time because you got ADHD. But if you have a really good reason for it, gosh, it becomes a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that, speaking on purpose, like out of the window goes the desire to chase the money too, right? Because I think when we do find our purpose, the money is a secondary. It's an outcome, and of course we all need it to live in this world. But it's like the fulfillment that you get from whatever you are doing.
Yeah.
That's what's going to drive your soul.
Yeah. Yeah, which, like, again, you see rich people sometimes who look miserable. And you see poor people, like your videos of poor people who got big smiles and lots of laughs.
Yeah.
And so the correlation between wealth and happiness is limited.
Mm-hmm.
Like that happiness does, to me, I think, come more from fulfillment. And so whether you got ADHD or some other thing going on, that doesn't indicate how much potential for happiness you can have.
Yeah. I mean, it's the Japanese that they don't measure wealth by how much money is in their bank account. They measure it by their friends.
Yeah.
And I think that it's not Facebook friends.
Yeah.
These are genuine people that they see often.
Yeah.
In person.
Yeah.
And that's what life's about, is joy, community.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful stuff. So do you have any other projects on the go, or is like Bioshack sort of the main focus right now?
Yeah, Bioshack's just the main focus. Want to help heal people, get them out of their minds and into their bodies.
Yeah.
It's worked for me. So I thought that's the other thing. It's things that worked for me. Maybe it doesn't work for everybody, but you don't know until you don't try. So I encourage all of our viewers and listeners, if there's a body of water, an area near you that you have an opportunity to dip your body in a cold, doesn't have to be freezing, but cold body of water, try it out.
Yeah. Not fast moving water. Do it with a friend if it's your first time. But yeah, it's incredible. It can be your bathtub. Like, that's safe.
Definitely.
Like,
a cold shower, right?
Yeah.
And listen to another podcast about it. Watch some Wim Hof stuff on YouTube. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Any other, like, where can people find Bioshack? This is playing, I think, mostly in the Okanagan or Western Canada.
Just in the Okanagan currently right now. We're going to be launching our website here shortly for online shopping.
Yeah.
So it's your at-home cold plunges and saunas and red light therapy, all things that essentially are what we call the proper healthcare system and not sick care system.
Yeah.
These are things that you can do yourself to better your life.
Yeah, beautiful. So it's like Bioshack.com.
Bioshack.com.
Okay, good. Well, thanks for meeting with me today, Damjan.
Thank you, Liam.
Okay.
It's been wonderful.